you remember the day you went to watch Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice at the cinema? I do, and I can't tell you how goddamn excited I was to be going. I even dressed for the part. We even took an hour's drive just to watch it at our closest IMAX cinema. We found our seats, the lights went down, and the movie played out. By the time the movie finished, I was left a little vacant. Something wasn't quite right, and I was left to ponder my thoughts. Months later, they released the Ultimate Edition, adding an extra 30 minutes of footage. I sat down and watched it again, and surprisingly, that vacant feeling I had now disappeared. It's generally wild how an extra 30 minutes solved the movie's pacing issues, and it makes sense that this was the biggest complaint of Batman v Superman. Watching the Ultimate Edition has a considerably smoother overall feel. The film in its entirety as it was intended to be, and as Zack Snyder had in mind from the beginning, might truly cause you to reconsider your view about this movie on everything. Every cut was taken from the theatre version is rapidly apparent. When Superman shows up in the desert to help Lois, it's immediately apparent what is going on. The rest of the movie makes more sense when you see the complete scenario because there were many cutscenes in this part. For instance, when Superman is the victim of a conspiracy and what makes him a threat, we can now sense the suspense that Zack aimed to build because the entire movie and tempo are smoother than the original. Batman v Superman might not have as much action as Man of Steel, which is purely based on Superman, but there is a lot more at stake, and the suspense that develops from the beginning to the finish matches the plot brilliantly. As the plot develops, the action sequences increase closer together and more dramatic, which makes sense considering that Doomsday ultimately reveals the story's conclusion. Many people hated BVS when it first came out because it was unexpected. Even some of my favourite YouTubers like Mr. Sunday Movies, Nostalgia Critic, and the Cosmonaut Variety Hour have harsh words for this movie. It also seems the Cosmonaut and I can't be friends as I don't fundamentally have an issue with Batman killing.
Now, if you're the kind of person who thinks Batman should kill people because it's more realistic, well, that's okay, but you and I can't be friends if you think that way.
But it does open up a can of worms. If Batman is okay killing a bunch of goons, then surely he'd without hesitation kill the Joker, especially since he killed his Robin. Anyway, while they do have some nice things to say, they predominantly dislike this movie. But their aversions for the film stems from their love of comic books. While I dabble in comics, I'm not a comic book stan. I think this is where the gulf between people who like this movie and those that don't. Superhero stories that assume, affirm, and unequivocally demonstrate the goodness of their protagonists have and continue to irate me. A common line of thought is that people are heroes because they do good, and heroes because they do good. Heroism, as it is sometimes portrayed, is a natural quality or talent that is part of a person's soul. But in both real life and the best superhero stories, goodness is a choice. Being a nice person is insufficient because it is a choice. Simply wanting to be good will not suffice. Even believing you're doing well isn't enough. The greatest Marvel hero understands that
with great power comes great responsibility.
You have a responsibility to not only save others because of what you are capable of, but also to take care of yourself because of who you are. This duty requires you to question your own goodness, consider the consequences of your actions, reconsider your own human frailties, and decide how to deal with them. Batman v Superman confronts that duty head on, forcing us to consider Superman's power and ask who decides what is good, rather than debating whether Batman or Superman is stronger. The brutality of Batman compels us to consider what justice means in the modern world. Listening to Lex Luthor's ramble speeches about might makes us wonder if power can ever be pure. The answers to these questions, like Batman v Superman, are occasionally complex and frequently dark. Batman v Superman does a fantastic job of depicting our favourite superheroes as they might appear in real life. Yes, many people hate this approach. They just want comic book accurate depictions of their beloved superheroes. But in the harsh real world, the same old, much-loved comic book characters are still alive and well, dealing with the issues we face. Regardless of how realistic these characters appear, they retain their true identity. Consider the character of Batman. Batman in Batman v Superman is widely regarded as the best portrayal of the character to date. You see him as a myth, as he is supposed to be seen. In the eyes of the criminals, he is a beast. He terrorizes many innocent people while also inspiring hope in others. The public's perception of him strikes you with a sense of realism. No matter how noble your intentions appear to be, you will not be accepted by everyone. We now have a Superman who is essentially a god who intervenes in human affairs. Making Superman human was probably one of the nicest things that ever happened to him. You feel bad for Superman. As I laid out in one of my previous videos, is Man of Steel a masterpiece? Superman needed a new direction to stand out. Zack couldn't just continue to do the same old Boy Scout routine. While this version of Superman is undoubtedly the classic version of Superman we all know and love, it was time to see a new version, a version that reflects modern society. After all, why just copy the Marvel formula when you can stand out from the crowd? I like that we get a Superman that grapples with his identity, and with this new version of Superman, it also requires a new iteration of Batman. Yes, the Batman depicted in the film is unquestionably the darkest, bloodiest form of a figure notorious for both his darkness and his brutality. Yes, this version of Superman is more uncertain of his place in our world than we've ever seen on screen due to the weight of his powers and responsibilities. However, and this is crucial, neither Batman nor Superman remain there. The objective is not the darkness at all, but rather the journey through it to the other side. Because of this, the movie opens with a Batman who is weathered and beat down. Years of playing the hero with little change in Gotham has led him down a dark path. This is expertly conveyed when he says to Alfred,
20 years in Gotham, Alfred. We've seen what promises are worth. How many good guys are left? How many stayed that way?
His dreams also play a significant role in exposing Bruce Wayne's identity and worldview. Bruce's nihilism in this movie is expertly conveyed in his dreams. The sadness is evident. On the inside, we can see how hurt he is. Instead of giving us the narrative, Zack has presented it to us. The track playing in the background is an amazing detail that is easily overlooked in the dream sequences. If you pay close attention, you will notice that the track is that of the World Engine, a flashback of Man of Steel.
Bring the Phantom Drive online.
Bruce's dreams are haunted by the World Engine. Even though it isn't explicitly shown, Superman haunts his dreams. What about the Man-Bat? It symbolises Bruce being taken over by the Bat and or the darkness. Isn't that the main subject of the entire film? Bruce emerges from the pit of despair to reclaim his former role as a hero. The nightmare sequence deserves special mention, one of the most devastating action set pieces in the genre. In a post-apocalyptic setting where Superman has turned evil, Batman must fend for himself. There is an obvious allusion to Darkseid and his parademons. A feeling of unfairness fans of comic books will like their hedonistic experience. And let's address the elephant in the room, or in this case, the Martha moment. This moment in the movie has probably become the subject of the greatest discussion of the movie. And for those who hate this moment, I'm sure no matter what I say will change your mind, but just hear me out. Batman is a troubled soul who still gets nightmares about the loss of his parents. His father's last words to him before passing away were about Martha, his mother. Bruce, a privileged and spoilt youngster, was very close to his mother. She was everything to him. I'm sure many of you know that the moms of Batman and Superman had the same name. So Superman speaking Martha's name because Superman wants Batman to help his mother causes Batman to have a traumatic event, and witnessing Superman straining to speak Martha makes him think of his father's last words and moments. It was at this moment, poised to murder Superman, Batman simply places himself as the murderer, and he realises how far he's took things. Despite all these diverse moments, and for those who dislike the film, they do acknowledge that the action scenes are excellent. Tell me one action sequence that is better than the warehouse fight. Hold that thought, we'll come back to this because we have to start with the opening action set piece. I still cannot believe to this day how incredible it was that director Zack Snyder and the writing team created a post-9/11 look at superheroes. The movie opens with a depiction of Superman and Zod fighting from the very end of Man of Steel. It not only gives us a real sense of the destruction from the perspective of the everyday people, but it also addresses the negative backlash from the original film, in which people were upset that Superman wasn't protecting human life. And this brilliant opening scene lays the groundwork for why Bruce Wayne, Batman, despises Superman. It's done expertly and flawlessly. And as I previously stated, Batman's dreams reinforce his beliefs that Superman is a threat to all of humanity. But let's get back to the warehouse fight scene. I think it goes without saying this is the greatest Batman fight scene ever put to the big screen. First off, making Batman's armor indestructible was a brilliant move to show how even someone as competent as him requires extra protection when he makes mistakes. From the very beginning to the very end of the scene, it delivers on its awesomeness. Batman climbs through the ceiling of a warehouse from the ground floor. You'll notice a few things if you look closely. The goons are so focused focused on the loud bang, exploding light and smoke that they miss the Batman climbing up into the ceiling, while he attaches small explosive magnetic devices to each gun as they wait for him to emerge from the hole in the floor. And it was incredible to see Batman fight multiple enemies at the same time while maintaining natural movement and smooth choreography. There aren't many visible dead spots. It was also remarkable to see that the opponents he was up against weren't complete morons who were just waiting in the wings for their turn to be pummeled. They landed a few solid blows and frequently forced Batman to defend himself by yanking his cape, throwing him to the ground, shooting him in the head and stabbing him in under his armpit. Everything I've discussed today is why Batman v Superman was and is so popular. It was also exactly the opposite of what everyone had expected. Batman v Superman was an unusual fusion of top-notch action and philosophy. It's a film that makes you think, which isn't true of all works in comic book movies. Of course, a large chunk of the general public thought it was boring, jawless and uninteresting. However, adding never-ending explosions and alien machines fighting each other from the first to the last second and boom, your earnings total billions of dollars. But what really makes Batman v Superman a masterpiece is its ability to balance its action and humour with thought-provoking themes about power, responsibility and the role of heroes in society. Just like Man of Steel, the film continues to challenge the viewer to consider what it means to be a hero and whether the actions of these powerful beings are always justified. When it comes to the plot holes, the answer is yes. There are some, but only a little. Batman v Superman, like every other film ever made, isn't perfect, and, to be clear, the Martha scene is not a flaw. Minor flaws exist, but nothing major. It's also incredible that nearly 7 years after its theatrical debut, Batman v Superman is still being debated and analysed to this very day. Batman v Superman is a must-see film for fans of superhero movies and anyone looking for an action-packed, humorous and thought-provoking cinematic experience. It manages to blend all these elements in a way that few other films in the genre have been able to do. You cannot deny that it succeeded in what it was trying to portray. Regardless of whether you think it's a masterpiece or an abomination, I firmly believe in the former. Batman v Superman delves deep into the gloom and despair while constantly pulling us out of it. It demonstrates the existence of love so powerful that it would willingly sacrifice itself for the sake of others, as well as the power of such sacrifice to deliver a person from even the darkest parts of his soul. And because of this, Batman v Superman now enjoys cult status. But what do you think of Batman v Superman? Is it a misunderstood masterpiece or a film riddled with flaws and inconsistencies? Either way, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Well, that's enough rambling for one day.